The courtroom reckoning. Philadelphia's City Hall loomed large against the gray February sky, its towering presence casting long shadows over the streets below. The air was bitter, filled with the sharp sting of winter, but inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was even colder. It was the kind of place where justice was supposedly blind, yet the weight of power tilted the scales in ways no one ever spoke about. Officer Chris Malone had been with the Philadelphia Police Department for 15 years. He knew these halls like the back of his hand, had testified in dozens of cases, and had built a reputation as a hard-nosed officer who didn't take nonsense from anyone. His record spoke for itself: more arrests than most, a near-flawless conviction rate, and the unwavering respect, or fear, of his colleagues. Today was just another day in court for him, another hearing, another petty criminal trying to weasel their way out of consequences. He stepped through the courthouse entrance, his steel-toed boots clapping against the marble floor as he made his way toward courtroom 302. He barely acknowledged the security guards. Why would he? They knew who he was. He was part of the system, a cog in the great machine of law and order. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with the usual tension. Defendants sat hunched, their families clutching each other in desperate hope. Lawyers scuttled about, clutching papers and whispering arguments under their breath. And at the heart of it all, the judge sat behind his bench, his eyes weary but sharp. Malone took his usual seat near the front, arms folded over his chest. His case today involved a 19-year-old kid, caught with enough narcotics to suggest something bigger than just casual use. The arrest had been clean, at least in his mind. The kid had looked nervous when approached, had made a move like he was going to run. That was all Malone needed. The defense attorney, a lanky public defender with rumpled clothes, stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to address." The doors creaked open behind them, interrupting the proceedings. Everyone turned. A woman entered, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She was tall, poised, and dressed in an immaculate black suit that fit her like it was made for war. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and her gaze was the kind that made men twice her size hesitate. Malone's brow furrowed. He had seen her before, just minutes ago, standing in the hallway, reading a file like she owned the place. She hadn't said a word to him, hadn't even acknowledged him, but there was something about her that had made his instincts twitch. She strode forward with quiet confidence and stopped before the judge's bench. "Your Honor," she said, her voice smooth, calm, and carrying an unmistakable authority. "Before this case proceeds, I would like to introduce myself." The judge frowned. "And you are?" "Clarissa Johnson," she said, reaching into her blazer and withdrawing a badge. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." A hush fell over the room. Malone's jaw tightened. FBI. What the hell was the FBI doing here? The judge adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Johnson, this is a state matter. I fail to see why the Bureau would be interested in a routine narcotics case." Clarissa's lips curved slightly, though it was not a smile. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this case is no longer just about narcotics. There are larger implications at play." She turned slightly, locking eyes with Malone. He stared back, unflinching. "What implications?" the judge asked. Clarissa took a breath, measured and deliberate. "There is reason to believe that multiple arrests, this one included, may have been compromised by unlawful actions on the part of the arresting officer." The silence that followed was deafening. Malone felt heat crawl up his neck. His grip on the armrest of his chair tightened. "Your Honor, this is absurd," the district attorney, a younger man with sharp features, cut in. "Officer Malone is one of our most decorated officers. His track record speaks for itself." "I'm sure it does," Clarissa said, her voice still unnervingly calm. "But I believe we need to take a closer look at how that record was built." Malone finally stood, his body rigid with barely restrained fury. "I don't know what you think you're implying, but I've done my job by the book for 15 years. Clarissa tilted her head slightly. 15 years, Officer Malone. That's a long time to be unchecked. His fists clenched. He wanted to say something, wanted to put this woman in her place, to remind her that she was walking into his territory, not the other way around. But then the judge cleared his throat. "Ms. Johnson, if the FBI has concerns regarding this case, you'll need to provide documentation. Until then, we proceed as planned." "Understood, Your Honor," she said. "I'll be submitting my request for an extended inquiry before the day is out." She turned on her heel and walked away, her presence lingering like the aftermath of a bomb. Malone sat down, his pulse thundering in his ears. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a sliver of unease crawl down his spine. Cracks in the foundation. Officer Christopher Malone stormed out of the courtroom, his breath a steady hiss between clenched teeth. His boots struck the marble floor of the courthouse with a weight that matched his growing fury. The fluorescent lights above seemed harsher, the murmurs of the people around him more intrusive than ever. FBI. Clarissa Johnson. The name rang in his head like a siren, each repetition stoking the fire inside him. For years, Malone had been untouchable. His arrest record was one of the best in the department. The DA's office loved him. He made their jobs easier, delivering criminals neatly wrapped in solid cases. His superiors looked the other way when he bent the rules because, at the end of the day, his numbers were good. But now she had walked into his courtroom and thrown everything into question. Unlawful actions. The words lingered in his mind, taunting him. This wasn't some internal affairs probe he could shake off with a slap on the wrist. This wasn't an angry suspect filing a lawsuit that would eventually be buried under paperwork. This was the FBI. And the way that woman had looked at him in the courtroom, steady, knowing, like she already had the full picture, made his stomach twist. Malone yanked open the door to the men's restroom, needing a moment to compose himself. The harsh scent of bleach and old pipes filled the air. He turned the faucet on, splashing cold water on his face, gripping the edges of the sink so hard his knuckles turned white. He had nothing to worry about. He'd made some tough calls, sure. He'd roughed up a few suspects when necessary. He may have tweaked reports to make sure they held up in court, but that was policing. That was reality. You didn't keep the streets clean by following the rulebook to the letter. Still, the presence of the FBI in his case meant something had changed. Someone had talked. He reached for his phone, scrolling through his recent calls. He needed to get ahead of this. The Whisper Network. Back at the Philadelphia FBI field office, Clarissa Johnson sat in a glass-walled conference room, flipping through case files. Agent Darius Green sat across from her, his fingers drumming lightly against the table as he studied the information spread out before them. "You hit him hard today," Green mused. Clarissa didn't look up. He needed to know his days of running unchecked are over. Green let out a small chuckle. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Clarissa closed one of the folders and met Green's gaze. "I need to know exactly what we're dealing with before we move forward. Malone's arrest record is too perfect. He finds drugs and weapons in every stop he makes. That's either godlike police instincts or a cop who doesn't mind manufacturing evidence to keep his numbers high." Green nodded, flipping through his notes. "And according to some of our early witnesses, it's the latter. We've got a handful of people saying he planted evidence. A couple of others claim he used intimidation tactics, but nothing hard enough to bring charges just yet." Clarissa leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "We need more. If we go after him with circumstantial evidence, he'll walk. I want something concrete, a pattern, video footage, anything that proves his corruption without a shadow of a doubt." Green hesitated for a moment before speaking. "There's been chatter about his body cam footage." Clarissa's eyebrow lifted. "Go on." Green smirked. Apparently, Malone has a habit of experiencing technical difficulties whenever he makes a questionable arrest. His footage cuts out. Files go missing. Timestamps don't match up. Clarissa nodded slowly, her mind racing. If they could prove a pattern of missing or altered footage, it would strengthen their case. I'll put in a request for all his body cam data, Green said. If there's even a single gap where a suspect claims evidence was planted, we'll have leverage. Clarissa tapped her fingers against the table. And what about his colleagues? Anyone talking? Green exhaled. So far, no one's willing to throw him under the bus. The blue wall is still standing. But I did get an anonymous tip this morning. Someone inside the precinct wants to meet. They say they have information on Malone. Clarissa's gaze sharpened. Set it up. Internal tension. Malone arrived at the 22nd precinct later that afternoon, his nerves coiled tight. The station, a squat brick building that had seen better days, had always been his fortress. He was a veteran here, a respected name. But today, he felt eyes on him in a way he never had before. He walked through the hallway, passing officers who offered nods that felt less solid than usual. It was subtle, but he caught it. The shift. The uncertainty. They'd heard about the courtroom, and they were waiting to see if he would sink or swim. Lieutenant Frederick Dawson stood near his office door, arms crossed. He was an older cop, thick around the middle, but still imposing when he wanted to be. He waved Malone inside. As soon as the door shut, Dawson exhaled. Chris, what the hell is going on? Malone leaned against the desk, feigning nonchalance. Nothing. Just some FBI broad trying to make a name for herself. Dawson's eyes darkened. That broad just put the entire department under a microscope. Do you have any idea how bad this could get? Malone scoffed. Come on, Fred. This is nothing. I made an arrest, and now the feds are sticking their noses where they don't belong. Dawson sighed, rubbing a hand down his face. You and I both know the feds don't show up over one arrest. They're looking at a pattern. Malone's jaw clenched. Dawson fixed him with a hard stare. Tell me right now, Chris. If they start digging, are they going to find anything that can actually stick? For the first time, Malone hesitated. He knew how this game worked. When cops got in trouble, their own people abandoned them faster than criminals did. If Dawson was asking this question, it meant his faith was already cracking. Of course not, Malone said, his voice flat. Dawson's gaze lingered a second too long before he nodded. Good, because if this turns into something bigger, I won't be able to protect you. A meeting in the shadows. That evening, Clarissa and Agent Green sat inside an unmarked car parked 2 blocks from a quiet diner. Across the street, a woman in a hooded sweatshirt stood, glancing around nervously before stepping inside. This our contact? Clarissa asked. Green nodded. Officer Janet Phelps. Mid-level patrol, not a rookie, but not high enough to be fully corrupted either. If anyone's got dirt on Malone, she does. Clarissa exhaled. Let's go. Inside, they found Phelps sitting in a back booth, her fingers curled around a mug of coffee. Her knee bounced slightly, a nervous tick. Clarissa slid into the seat across from her. Officer Phelps. Thank you for meeting with us. Phelps glanced around before leaning in. I don't have long. If anyone finds out I'm here, I'm done. Clarissa nodded. We'll keep this quiet. Tell us what you know. Phelps took a shaky breath. Malone. He's not just a bad cop. He's dirty. Clarissa and Green exchanged glances. Phelps swallowed hard. I've seen him plant evidence. I've seen him intimidate suspects into false confessions. He's got a way of making people disappear from reports. Clarissa's voice was steady. Do you have proof? Phelps exhaled. Not yet, but if you look in the right places, you'll find it. Clarissa met her gaze. Then we'll find it. Beneath the surface. The evening air in Philadelphia carried a biting chill. The streets bathed in the flickering glow of neon signs and dim streetlights. The city never truly slept, but certain corners of it carried a heavy silence, the kind that spoke of secrets buried beneath the surface. Officer Christopher Malone sat inside his unmarked patrol car, parked near an old diner on the south side of the city. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the steering wheel as he stared out at the rundown storefront across the street. His mind was a storm, circling the events of the day. The FBI. That woman. Clarissa Johnson. Her name alone made his blood pressure spike. He had spent 15 years making sure his name commanded respect in this city, 15 years cementing himself as one of the few officers who could handle the worst parts of Philadelphia without flinching. Now, some federal prosecutor had the audacity to step into his courtroom and act like he was the one who belonged behind bars. He clenched his jaw, taking a slow, steady breath. He had done what needed to be done. That was the reality of being a cop in this city. The lines weren't always clear, and sometimes bending the rules was the only way to ensure criminals got what they deserved. So why did it feel like the walls were closing in? His phone buzzed. He picked it up, reading the message with narrowed eyes. "Meet me at the usual spot. We need to talk. Now." It was from Lieutenant Dawson. That wasn't good. Dawson wasn't the type to panic, and he certainly wasn't the type to call emergency meetings unless things were bad. With a muttered curse, Malone started the engine and pulled into the street, heading toward the 22nd Precinct's private backlot, a place where cops handled business away from prying eyes. The meeting in the shadows. Malone arrived to find Dawson already waiting, standing near the back entrance with a cigarette between his fingers. The older officer's face was lined with tension, his usual stoic expression giving way to something closer to frustration. Malone stepped out of the car, the pavement crunching beneath his boots. "What's going on?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Dawson exhaled a slow breath, shaking his head. "You're in deeper than I thought, Chris." Malone frowned. The FBI doesn't have anything. Just a bunch of speculation and a woman looking to make a name for herself. Dawson flicked his cigarette into the darkness. "That woman is about to pull the entire department under federal review. Do you understand what that means?" Malone stayed silent. Dawson's voice was harsher now. "They've already requested your body cam footage. Not just from this case. From dozens of your arrests." Malone's pulse spiked. "They're looking for patterns, Chris. Missing footage, inconsistent reports, excessive force complaints." Dawson took a step closer, voice lowered. "Internal Affairs is sniffing around too. They're scared of getting caught in the blast radius if the Bureau finds something they should have caught years ago." Malone gritted his teeth. "I never did anything IA could prove." Dawson's stare was piercing. "Maybe not then, but this isn't IA anymore. This is feds, and they don't give a damn about department loyalty." The words sat heavy in the air between them. Finally, Malone let out a slow breath. "What are you saying, Fred?" Dawson glanced around before answering. "You need to lay low. Stop making traffic stops. Stop patrolling alone. Don't give them anything new to throw at you." Malone scoffed. "Lay low? That's your big advice." Dawson's expression darkened. "I'm telling you to stop acting like you're untouchable. Because you're not anymore." For the first time, in a long time, Malone felt a flicker of something dangerously close to fear. The walls began to crumble. Across the city, in a dimly lit FBI field office, Clarissa Johnson sat at a long table littered with case files, witness statements, and surveillance reports. A digital display flickered on the far wall, playing grainy clips of body cam footage, most of them cutting off at crucial moments. Agent Darius Green stood nearby, flipping through a thick folder. "This one's from last year," he said, pulling up a report on his laptop. "Malone arrested a kid named Tyrone Ellis. Claimed he found a stolen gun in the kid's backpack." Clarissa glanced at the screen. "Did Ellis have a record?" Green shook his head. "Clean. Never even had a parking ticket. But get this, the body cam footage for that stop. Gone. Department logged it as corrupted data." Clarissa's eyes narrowed. "And the kid, where is he now?" Green checked his notes. "Out on bail. Case is still pending. But his family swears up and down that the gun wasn't his." Clarissa exhaled slowly. It was happening. The pattern was clear now. Missing footage, questionable arrests, defendants with no prior records suddenly facing years in prison. Malone wasn't just bending the rules. He was breaking them. She tapped her fingers against the table, her mind moving through the next steps. "Reach out to Ellis's family," she said. "I want to speak to him personally." Green nodded, grabbing his phone. Clarissa leaned back, staring at the college of evidence before her. They were close now. And if Malone thought he could slip away, he was about to learn exactly what happened when the FBI set its sights on you. A desperate move. Malone sat in his car, gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. He knew what was happening. They were building a case. They were gathering witnesses. And sooner or later, they were coming for him. His breath was ragged, his mind spiraling. He had spent years playing this game, maneuvering through the system like a master, always staying one step ahead. But now, he was losing ground. And when a man like Malone started losing ground, he only had two choices: run or fight back. His phone buzzed. A new message. And no one in Namir. I know what they're doing to you. If you want to survive this, meet me at the warehouse on 9th Street. Midnight. No cops. Just you. Malone's heart pounded. Someone was offering him a lifeline. Or a trap. Either way, he couldn't ignore it. With one final look at his reflection in the rearview mirror, he started the car and drove off into the night. The warehouse conspiracy. The clock ticked toward midnight as Christopher Malone drove through the quiet, desolate streets of South Philadelphia. The streetlights flickered over cracked pavement, the distant hum of the city filling the air like a low, unrelenting warning. His grip on the steering wheel tightened as he approached 9th Street, his mind racing with possibilities. The text message had been cryptic. No name, no details, just a time, a place, and a single promise. If you want to survive this, meet me. Survive. The word churned in his gut like acid. The FBI wasn't playing games anymore. Clarissa Johnson wasn't just some hotshot prosecutor looking to score points. She was building a case. A real case. And someone inside this city, knew enough to think he was in real danger. Malone pulled up to the abandoned warehouse, his headlights sweeping across the rusted-out building. The old steel structure stood like a dying beast, its frame bent with time, its entrance gaping in the dim glow of the moon. He turned off the engine, his breath steady but slow. His right hand hovered near the Glock 19 holstered at his hip. He wasn't stupid. Whoever sent that message wasn't necessarily a friend. And in this city, people with secrets ended up in graves. A meeting in the dark. Malone stepped into the warehouse, his boots crunching over shattered glass and forgotten debris. The air smelled of rust and old oil, thick with the kind of history that whispered of crime deals gone wrong and bodies dumped without a trace. A single hanging light bulb swayed from the ceiling, casting long shadows over the concrete floor. Then, a voice. "You took your time." Malone turned sharply, his hand brushing the grip of his gun. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, a man in his late 40s, grizzled, eyes sharp beneath the brim of a faded baseball cap. He wore a leather jacket, scuffed boots, and the kind of hard expression that only came from years of living on the wrong side of the law. Malone's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" The man smirked, shaking his head. "That's not the question you should be asking." He took a slow step forward. "The question is, how badly do you want to make it out of this in one piece?" Malone's jaw clenched. "I don't have time for games." "Neither do I." The man leaned against a rusted crate. "But let's be honest here. You already know your time's running out, don't you?" Malone stayed silent. The man chuckled, pulling out a cigarette. "Yeah, that's what I thought." He lit it, taking a slow drag before exhaling the smoke into the cold night air. "You're looking at federal time, Officer Malone. This isn't some slap-on-the-wrist IA investigation. Clarissa Johnson, she's got teeth, and she's ready to sink them into you." Malone crossed his arms, feigning disinterest. "You don't know what you're talking about." The man's smirk widened. "Oh, but I do." He reached into his jacket. Malone stiffened, but instead of a weapon, the man pulled out a thin folder and tossed it onto a nearby crate. "Go ahead," the man said. "Take a look." Malone hesitated, then grabbed the folder and flipped it open. His stomach dropped. Inside were internal memos from the FBI field office, case reports, and sealed testimonies. Testimonies from officers inside his own precinct. Malone felt his throat tighten. "Where the hell did you get this?" The man exhaled another cloud of smoke. "Let's just say I have my sources." Malone flipped through the pages. There were statements, names, people who had been in the room when he made his arrests, people who should have had his back, people like Officer Janet Phelps. Malone's pulse hammered. "Looks like your friends are turning on you," the man said. "And once the first rat jumps ship, the others follow." Malone's hands curled into fists. "Why are you showing me this?" The man chuckled. "Because, Officer Malone, you have two options. You take the fall, or you make a move before they do." Malone's eyes darkened. "What kind of move?" The man's smirk widened. "You know what kind." A heavy silence filled the warehouse. Then, Malone slowly closed the folder. His mind was already calculating the next step. Meanwhile, at the FBI field office, Clarissa Johnson sat in a dimly lit office, staring at the corkboard in front of her. Pinned across it were photos of Malone, reports of missing body cam footage, and witness statements. Beside her, Agent Darius Green was reviewing a new set of documents. "We got another hit," Green said, setting a file down. "Remember the kid from last year? Tyrone Ellis." Clarissa nodded. Green flipped the file open. "We just pulled the footage from a traffic cam near the scene. And guess what?" He smirked. There was no gun in his backpack when Malone first stopped him. Clarissa's eyes sharpened. "But it was there when he got to the station." "Exactly." She exhaled slowly. "That's evidence tampering." Green nodded. "And federal charges." Clarissa leaned forward, pressing her fingers together. They were getting closer. Malone's foundation was cracking. But she also knew men like him didn't go down without a fight. And if he realized how deep he was sinking, he might just do something desperate. The first casualty. The next morning, Officer Janet Phelps parked her car outside a small diner, her fingers drumming against the steering wheel. She had barely slept. After her meeting with the FBI, the weight of what she had done pressed down on her chest like a stone. She had broken the code. She had turned against one of their own. And now she was waiting for the fallout. With a slow breath, she grabbed her coffee from the cup holder and stepped out of the car. But she never made it inside the diner. A loud pop echoed through the morning air. The coffee cup hit the pavement first. Then, Janet Phelps collapsed, a crimson stain spreading across her uniform. Screams erupted as bystanders rushed forward. In the distance, a black car sped away, its taillights vanishing around the corner. And just like that, the first shot had been fired. The battle was no longer just about corruption. It had turned into a war. Blood in the water. The sirens screamed through the early morning streets of Philadelphia, cutting through the crisp air like a blade. Blue and red lights bathed the pavement outside the diner, flashing against the wide eyes of horrified bystanders. Officer Janet Phelps lay on the sidewalk, her uniform soaked in blood, her fingers twitching weakly as paramedics scrambled to stabilize her. The bullet had torn through her shoulder, missing her heart by inches, but the damage was done. This wasn't just an attack. This was a message, and Clarissa Johnson received it loud and clear. The Bureau strikes back. Clarissa stormed into the Philadelphia FBI field office, her heels clicking hard against the polished floor. The bullpen was already in chaos, phones ringing, agents scrambling, reports flooding in from the precinct and crime scene. Darius Green was waiting by her office door, arms crossed, his face set in a grim expression. "She's alive," he said before she could even ask. Clarissa exhaled, some of the tension in her chest loosening. Where is she? Hospital, Green said. She lost a lot of blood, but she's stable. Doctors say she was lucky. Clarissa's jaw clenched. There's no such thing as luck in situations like this. This was deliberate. Green nodded. No doubt about it. Witnesses say the shooter was in a black Chevy Impala. Unmarked plates, tinted windows. He flipped open his notepad. Pulled up real smooth, one shot, then gone. Clarissa crossed her arms, her mind moving fast. Who would have wanted her dead? Green gave her a look. Clarissa sighed. Besides the obvious. Green leaned against the desk. I made a few calls. Phelps wasn't just any officer. She had been on the fence about coming forward for weeks. The fact that she finally did. That means Malone or someone in his circle found out. Clarissa nodded. So the hit wasn't random. It was damage control. Green exhaled. Exactly. And that means we got them scared. She tapped her fingers against the desk. Not scared enough. Because whoever had pulled that trigger was still out there. And Officer Christopher Malone had just crossed the line from a dirty cop to something much worse. Malone's next move. Across the city, Malone sat in the dim light of his apartment, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table, his gun lying next to it. He had spent all night thinking. He hadn't ordered the hit on Phelps. He wasn't stupid enough to put out a blatant assassination on a fellow cop. But someone had done it. And that meant his name was already being attached to it. He rubbed a hand down his face, his mind racing. The FBI was closing in. Internal Affairs was sniffing around. And now someone was making decisions on his behalf. That meant two things. He was losing control. Whoever was pulling the strings wasn't going to stop until he was buried. His phone buzzed. A restricted number. He hesitated, then answered. Yeah. A voice, smooth and low, came through the speaker. You're welcome. Malone's stomach dropped. He gripped the phone tighter. What the hell did you do? A soft chuckle. I handled your problem. Malone shot up from his chair. That wasn't my call. You hesitated. The voice replied. I didn't. Malone's pulse thundered in his ears. You just put the entire department under federal lockdown. Do you have any idea what you've done? Another chuckle. Relax, officer. Phelps isn't dead. A warning shot was all she needed. She'll keep quiet now. Malone's hand trembled as he ran it through his hair. You don't understand. They won't just let this go. Oh, I understand plenty, the voice said. You're in the middle of a war, Malone. And the only way to survive a war, a pause, is to kill your enemy first. The call ended. Malone stood there, breathing hard, gripping the phone so tightly it nearly cracked. The walls were closing in. And now, there was blood in the water. The turning point. By noon, Clarissa Johnson was sitting across from Tyrone Ellis, the young man wrongfully arrested by Malone last year, inside a secured FBI conference room. Tyrone, barely 19, sat stiffly in the chair, his hands clasped together. His mother sat beside him, her eyes red from crying, a protective arm around his shoulder. You don't have to be afraid, Clarissa said gently. We're here to make this right. Tyrone swallowed hard. You're saying you can prove I was set up? Clarissa nodded. We have evidence, and we need your testimony to bring him down. The young man hesitated. His mother spoke for him. He doesn't want to be another body in the street. Clarissa's heart ached at the words. Because in their world, that was a real fear. Listen to me, she said softly. This isn't just about you anymore. Officer Malone isn't working alone. If we don't stop him now, more people like you, will end up in his trap. Tyrone met her gaze. If I talk and he walks free, I'm dead. Clarissa didn't flinch. He won't walk free. Tyrone exhaled shakily. Then I'll tell you everything. She nodded. Good. Because with his testimony, they were ready to take Malone down. Endgame. That night, Malone received one final message. It was slipped under his apartment door, a single envelope. Inside was a photo, a surveillance image of him at the warehouse meeting the man who had warned him. Malone's blood ran cold. Someone was watching him. And then, scrawled in red ink at the bottom of the photo, "You're next." Malone dropped the envelope, his mind spiraling. The walls weren't just closing in. They were about to crush him completely. And there was only one way out. He grabbed his gun. His next move had to be the deadliest one yet. The fall of Christopher Malone. The storm had finally come. Philadelphia's streets hummed with tension, the air thick with unease as the city braced for the fallout. The FBI, Internal Affairs, and the U.S. Attorney's Office had all locked their sights on one man, Officer Christopher Malone. For 15 years, Malone had operated like a ghost in the system, weaving through the cracks of justice, bending the law to fit his own sense of order. But now the cracks were collapsing, and they were taking him down with them. One last shot at survival. Malone sat in his car outside McKenna's bar, a dingy cop hangout on the south side of the city. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his fingers drumming anxiously. He had spent the last 3 hours trying to control the damage, calling in favors, digging through every last contact he had in the department. But nobody was picking up. His so-called brothers in blue, they had already cut him loose. His phone buzzed. Restricted number. Malone hesitated, then answered. A familiar, cold voice came through the line. "I see you got my message." Malone's stomach clenched. "Who the hell are you?" A chuckle. "I told you already. I'm the one making sure you don't end up dead in a cell." Malone exhaled sharply. "Then tell me what I need to do." Another pause. Then the voice said, "Leave. Now." Malone's pulse spiked. "Leave. Philadelphia isn't safe for you anymore. The feds have enough to bury you. Your own people won't protect you. If you stay, you're going to end up in cuffs or a body bag." Malone shook his head. "I can fight this." A sigh came through the line. "Malone, listen to me. You have one way out, but it won't be clean. You disappear now, or you get eaten alive." Malone gritted his teeth. "And what? Run for the rest of my life." The voice was deadly calm. Better than the alternative. The call cut off. Malone sat in silence, his heartbeat pounding like a drum in his chest. For the first time in his entire career, he felt powerless. And for a man like Malone, that was more terrifying than any prison sentence. The FBI moves in. Across the city, in the dimly lit FBI conference room, Clarissa Johnson stood before a board covered in evidence, mugshots, reports, surveillance footage, and missing body cam timestamps. Agent Darius Green leaned against the table, arms crossed. "Everything's in place. The grand jury is ready. The arrest warrant is being processed as we speak." Clarissa exhaled. Good. They had him. Officer Christopher Malone was officially out of time. Within the next 12 hours, his career, his freedom, his entire world, it would all be over. But Clarissa had learned something over the years. Men like Malone, they never went down easy. And she had a feeling he had one last move left. A man on the run. The moment Malone saw the first police cruiser pulling up outside the bar, his body went into survival mode. He knew what this was. This wasn't just a routine stop. This was the beginning of the end. He threw his car into reverse, tires screeching against the pavement as he sped into the night. Behind him, the flashing red and blue lights erupted, sirens wailing as 2 patrol cars peeled after him. His radio, still connected to the department's frequency, burst with chatter. "We've got eyes on the suspect. White male, dark sedan, heading north on 8th. Be advised. FBI involvement. Pursuit authorized." Malone's jaw clenched. They were coming. And they weren't going to stop. He took a sharp turn onto Market Street, weaving through traffic, his mind racing. Where could he go? Who could he trust? Then, A realization struck him like a bullet to the chest. He had no allies left. Not in the department, not on the streets, not even with the people who had once turned a blind eye to his crimes. Malone had spent years building his kingdom, and now he was watching it burn. The standoff. The chase ended on an abandoned stretch of highway just outside the city. Malone's car skidded to a stop, tires smoking, the front bumper dented from a failed attempt to ram through a roadblock. FBI vehicles flanked him from all sides, headlights blinding him. The sound of dozens of weapons cocking in unison filling the night air. A loud voice cut through the chaos. "Christopher Malone, step out of the vehicle." Hands in the air. Malone sat there, breathing hard, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His gun lay on the passenger seat. One final choice: surrender or go out fighting. Then he saw her. Clarissa Johnson, standing at the front of the blockade, her expression unreadable, her gun lowered. Their eyes met through the windshield. And for the first time, Malone saw exactly what she was. She wasn't some federal suit looking for a quick win. She was a force of nature. And she had never stopped hunting him. The weight of it all crashed down at once. The corruption, the lies, the lives he had ruined. This was where it ended. Slowly, with the entire world watching, Christopher Malone opened the car door and stepped out. His hands raised, his empire of fear crumbling beneath him. The aftermath. The arrest of Christopher Malone sent shockwaves through Philadelphia. The news outlets ran the footage on repeat. A once powerful officer, now cuffed, his head bowed as he was led into federal custody. The FBI indictment listed a catalog of crimes: fabricated evidence, illegal arrests, extortion, obstruction of justice. His former colleagues distanced themselves. His so-called allies turned against him. And when the trial began, the floodgates opened. Witness after witness took the stand. Tyrone Ellis, standing tall, telling his story. Janet Phelps, recovering in the hospital, giving her testimony. Community members, finally free to speak without fear. It was over. Christopher Malone was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, convicted on multiple civil rights violations and abuse of power. For years he had played judge, jury, and executioner on the streets. Now, justice had found him. Epilogue. The end of a legacy. 1 month later, Clarissa Johnson stood outside City Hall, the Philadelphia skyline glowing behind her. She had done it. But the war wasn't over. Men like Malone, they were everywhere, in every city, in every precinct, hidden beneath the surface. She had won this battle, but there were still more to fight. And Clarissa wouldn't stop until the job was finished. With a slow breath, she turned away from the cityscape and walked into the night. The fight wasn't over. Not yet.